So I'm inviting Cornell to come up along with Anthony Weekly with Truist. And so we shift now. It's still in the same general ballpark, but instead of focusing specifically on Community Reinvestment Act and related topics, we're talking about community benefits agreements. And I know from talking with some of you last night and this morning, the first question is, what is that? So welcome. So we welcome Anthony Weekly from Truist to join us here. So we have conversation about CBAs. You've already met Cornell, of course. Cornell is, oh, there we go. Okay. Yeah. So we're going to have a conversation here about community benefits agreements. So with one of the things that has emerged with significant help from NCRC is that there is a time where it's structured for the community to have conversations with the local bank. And that is the community benefits agreement, where there is, whatever the bank's footprint is, if it's very small, very large, community organizations, many of whom may be members of NCRC, or in our case here in Florida, members of CRAF, have a chance to come together and in a structured format have a conversation with bank representatives like Anthony. And so out of that emerges an agreement about how lending will be done, how much of what kind of things in what areas of the geographic footprint. And sometimes, often, out of that emerges a community advisory board that is a way of carrying on the conversation in a more structured way with the bank. And so one of the significant ones for us in Florida is the community benefits agreement with Truist Bank. And so I'm going to ask both Anthony first and then Cornell to comment about that agreement and how did it happen, and what did we end with? And so tell us what's behind the curtain on the magic.
Well, first of all, there's Truist had a community benefits plan, not agreement, and there's a difference, right? Community benefits plan, you don't have to abide by the Sunshine Act, which is transparency, right? And banks do that for a specific reason, right? But what I would say is, you look at what Truist did, and this was based off the merger of Heritage BB&T and Heritage SunTrust in 2019, and we agreed to do a community benefits plan. And we sat down with community partners like Cornell, and in particular NCRC and some of its affiliates. And I think we hosted maybe, 10 to 14 listening sessions. I probably participated in 7 or 8 of those listening sessions across our footprint. And Truist covers a 17-state footprint plus DC, right? And so you got to go out and you got to ascertain the community needs, right? Because we think we know what you need, but we really don't know what you need at the end of the day. And you come up with a common vision and cause of meeting community needs. And so that's really the crux of the agreement. You have to come up with a common cause to meet the community needs. And we did that. And we created a deal that was $60 billion in 3 years, right? In the form of mortgage loans. It wasn't just mortgages. It was for low and moderate income individuals. It was for majority minority census tract and minority borrowers, which I thought was really smart by NCRC and all of its affiliates, because we don't necessarily track, we're not required to track really the majority minority borrower piece from a HMDA perspective. We do, but we're not required. And I knew, because at that time I was a leader on the mortgage side, senior leadership mortgage side. And a part of that $60 billion commitment was $30 billion by mortgage, which I led. I said, that's a smart thing that they did with putting majority minority in there and minority borrowers. And I knew the bank would be challenged with that. So it was mortgage, it was small business, small farm, it was investments, live tech. Under investments, you had live tech, new market tax credit, treasury bonds, and philanthropic giving. And then it was the lending piece, mortgage, small business, small farm, community development lending, and then services, volunteerism. And really, we had a supply diversity goal on there also. And we actually ended the community benefits plan in 2022. It started from 2020 to 2022. Realize it started right during COVID, right? We rolled out in 2019, March, COVID hit. Everybody remember that day, right? COVID hit. And, we were at a crux from an organizational perspective. We said, hey, we have an out clause in our community benefits plan, right? And if the market dynamics change, we could have got a $60 billion commitment. But what we decided to do is say, hey, this is when the community needs us the most from a truest perspective. And our senior leadership said, let's deliver on this and let's out deliver on this. And we actually ended up at 75 billion at the end of 2022 from a truest perspective. And remember, that's all through COVID. But at the end of the day, it's all about partnerships. It's all about conversations, right? I think the young lady asked, how do I get to my CRA loan officer or community development manager? Well, you start the relationship before you need something. It's just like you get a loan, right? You don't just typically go out and apply for a loan. You think about applying for a loan, you meet the right people, then you go get your loan. So you don't ask for the loan when you need it. You kind of work on that loan before you need it at the end of the day. It's the same thing with banking relationships and your CRA loan officer at the end of the day. And for us, for half of the state of Florida, Tari Bolden covers that, which I think most of you know in this room. Raise your hand, Tari. And her great manager, Dorothy Cleves, covers the Southeast. So they work together collectively to meet your community needs. Or no?
So it was a challenge, and I'm going to not harp on, but I want to bring about the important part of the listening sessions. We convened, the Community Investment Alliance of Florida convened the listening session for our state, which means I was able to reach out to organizations all over the state to come in and talk about their specific needs. And as you well know, we're in some things we're no different than other states. We all need affordable housing. We all want investment in social impact organizations, but we have something in particular here that's different from most states. Sea level rise and climate change and climate gentrification. Those three items are different than any other state across the bank's footprint. And the bank was able, that listening session, I think we harped on it. We talked about it for at least an hour in that particular session. And organization after organization after organization brought it up as to how it affected their mission, how it affected the people who they serve, and how it affected even how they get back and forth to work every day. So that particular listening session was unique for the bank to listen to and understand how that particular item affected us more than it affected any other state across their footprint. It was a long, challenging process because we try to work back and forth, and it's a negotiation. Truly is. It's a negotiation. Going back and forth, trying to understand the bank's needs, the bank's trying to understand our needs, and trying to invest in those needs. And I use the word investment because this is not something that they're just giving. Okay, that's not what it is. This is an investment in order to make the communities better and build a just economy. It's and some things they can't do just based on regulation. So I'm, as I stated earlier, I don't have any patience anymore, and Anthony will tell you that. It comes through in every community advisory meeting board meeting that we have. But I also understand that there's certain things that they can't do and they can't do. So it was beneficial to the community. It was something that the community has to be involved in. As he stated, and I'm really glad you said that, Anthony. We sit in, I sit in committee meeting after committee meeting after committee meeting, or any other type of meeting, either with government or even with my fellow social impact organizations, and everybody wants to tell the community what they want or what they need. Everybody wants to tell them without having any input from them. And the challenge was making sure that we had people that attended that meeting who felt it on the ground and understood exactly what was going on. Not only did they know it, but they actually lived it. That was an important part of the conversation.
And I would say, you know, full disclosure, he was on our community advisory board for the last 3 years, right? But because of his persistence, right, we do typically 3 to 4 community listening sessions a year at Truist anyway, without a merger and acquisition. And our last one last year was in Miami, right? And on the crux of that, you know, he mentioned the affordable housing issue, the climate resiliency issues with the sea and all that stuff. And we did a $75 million LIHTC deal in Miami, right? But we also made a significant investment in you all through Cornell's organization to drive some of the change that's needed.
Let me add, for those of you who might not be sure, community benefits agreements with banks is in a class by itself. I know some of you, particularly in the larger cities, are concerned about what real estate developers are doing downtown and wish that there was a community benefits agreement with that developer. The difference is there's a Community Reinvestment Act that applies to banks, but doesn't apply to developers. And so there is a legal basis that Jesse explained under which all of this happens. But if you have a developer who may be taking out part of your neighborhood or building on a sacred spot, you can't appeal to the Community Reinvestment Act. You might be able to appeal to the bank that's financing that developer, but you can't do that directly with the developer. Some cities will engage in a community benefits agreement with you and that developer, and then they become the enforcer. But that's a different story than what we have here. I just want to make sure that that's clear.
I'm glad you brought that up, Art, and I think it's and I can tell you, Anthony, that we've used the community benefits plan with in trying to initiate this with developers and cities. I've been working with a group called Public Land for Public Good. Malika's here, and Malika's in that group with us. We've been fighting for a particular project in Miami since 2019, and one of the things that we're trying to get government to understand is to implement a community benefits agreement or plan with every RFP. That it makes it mandatory, and working on this was the basis of that. That made us say, okay, well, look, if banks can do it, why can't you? And banks who are invested in the communities and trying to do good in the communities and want to do good in the communities have helped us work on this plan. We're trying to get that in government, period, where it's mandatory that the developer does a community benefits plan or agreement with the community prior to submitting an RFP, and that it's governed. Because one of the things that happened with us is that Truist didn't just do a community benefits plan and then we just sat around and wait on things to happen. They actually engaged a community advisory board, and we met once a quarter. And we would, or twice a year, I forgot how many times it was, but we would actually come up, 3 times a year.
3 times a year.
We would come up, we'd go to Charlotte, and they would give us the numbers of what we were doing, and we would actually do feedback and give them, okay, well, great plan, great you did this, but here's some other things and he will tell you that I would be I wanted to fight for some things that we needed.
Adversarial. But we had a common goal, community needs. So anytime you enter one of these, you have to have a common goal at the end of the day. And that always brings everybody back to the middle of what needs to be done.
So, Anthony, would it be fair to say that he was an advocate for Florida?
Absolutely. Absolutely. Every single meeting, 3 times a year, he was an advocate for it. And that's good for us, right? And you think about Truist, let me just give you the size of Truist, right? We're 550 billion in total assets. We got 144 assessment areas. We got 2,000 branches. Our last CRA rating from 2017 to 2019 was outstanding. We're waiting on our CR rating for 2020 to 2022, which we believe will be outstanding, notwithstanding the politics, the bureaucracy, the red tape, all that good stuff, right? And so, you know, he did a tremendous job of representing you all. When I say we did a listening session, what was it, last October? My boss, who's the chief legal officer and corporate secretary for the board, was there. We had the head of the Truist Foundation. We had the head of the Truist Charitable Fund. I was there. We had the regional president there, the market president, our financial inclusion team. So we take it seriously from a Truist perspective, right? And I can tell you this, there were results out of that meeting. Anytime we do a listening session, there's going to be investments in that community, because once you identify the needs, we come up with a strategic plan along with you to meet those needs. Now, we can't do it by ourselves. We got to have First Horizon, Wells Fargo, Bank of America, TD Bank. We all have to work together collaboratively to meet those community needs at the end of the day, because it's not one bank that's going to do it. You know, Jesse talked about how we got here. It was by design, right? And the banks just didn't do it by themselves, right? Yeah. It was the FHA, it was HUD, it was Congress, it was all these folks, cities and states and municipalities that did this. Yeah. But there's a lot of noise about what banks have to do. But what I can tell you is we have a definite amount of dollars that we can invest, because we are a for-profit organization. We have to answer to and have a fiduciary responsibility to our shareholders and the community at the end of the day. So it takes all of us to make this change. When I think about Truist, the reason I work here, how many of you are, raise your hand if you're a social impact worker. Raise your hand. Raise your hand. That's all of us, really. And I am a social impact worker. I just work for a bank, right? And I grew up in Detroit, so I understand, you know, the needs from an affordable housing perspective, right? I understand racism, discrimination. I understand, you know, environmental injustices, because all the brownfields, all the bad things are in those communities, right? I understand, you know, the justice system and the problems that we have. But it's only going to change through us. It's not going to happen through Congress, but it's going to change through us and us working together to make it happen. And at Truist, our purpose is to inspire and build better lives and communities. I really believe that. And I believe our leadership believes that, right? And I have a personal purpose, right? And that is to create access to credit and capital to close the minority wealth gap at the end of the day. That's my personal purpose. And when you talk about inspire and build better lives community, inspire means to be the first, to be an innovator, to be a catalyst for funding, right? And to build means, hey, if you build your community, you're going to build your bank. So we don't have anything without you. So we're here to support you.
I think we have some time here now. If you have questions, I think the mics can appear here. So the question back here, Malika. Yeah, thank you.
I'm Latina, so I can speak really loud. Oh, we got
No,
this
we
too.
need it.
Thank you. Good morning still, everyone. Mileka Burgos Flores with the Alapara Collaborative CDC. I want to thank Truist, because the moment that they became Truist, you brought a branch to my community that is a bank desert, so thank you. Also, we are benefiting with the city of Miami from the Where Business Starts program, and we are working within our community and 2 other communities to implement that with Main Street and Living Cities. I wanted to ask my 2 questions. Number 1 is the enforcement of CBA. How do you enforce the CBA that you just created as a bank? So that would be question number 1.
And the second, go ahead with the second one.
And then the second question is, are foreclosed property lists or assets part of that bank CBA pie, or is that not part of the CBA pie?
So first question is, how do you enforce the CBA, right? And so it takes leadership at the top of the house to understand that. So basically, when you do a merger and acquisition, right, it has to be for the community good too, right? But your leadership has to believe that. And I can say our leader, Bill Rogers, and his executive leadership team believed that we should do this. That's why, even though COVID happened, we said, hey, we're going to deliver because community needs us the most. We could have backed out, right? So that's the first thing. So you got to have cooperation from the top of the house, and we have to infuse that in the culture, right? And that means every business has to get on board. And my team was responsible for ensuring that they delivered on that. And then we were responsible to the community advisory board to make sure we're hitting those numbers. So you gotta have checks and balances in place, but you gotta also remember data, it makes the change that we want, right? You gotta use data because everybody's heart and mind is not convinced, right? But we need data to make the change that we seek every single day.
Cornell?
It is a challenge right now. And only reason I say it's a challenge because remember, community benefits agreements or plans are not regulated. And I will be honest with you, and when we were working on the new rule, part of our 14-page response, I spent a lot of time writing about how we would love to see the community benefits plans or community benefits agreements being regulated, meaning they are part of the exam. So when we do these things, we have to applaud when we do these things because the banks are doing this because they want to do it. This is not something that we make them do. And it's not regulated. So they come into this with eyes wide open and wanting to do better in the community. And this is something that we all have to applaud because this could be something, okay, we're going to do a merger or an acquisition, and that's just the end of it. But coming to us and want to engage as far as a community benefits plan or community benefits agreement is important in order to understand what's going on in the community and to actually reinvest in the community. So I really want to applaud you for that.
So I would say it's not regulated, right? Right? And so the lobbying you all did worked, right? We're regulated by the FDIC. And so we just went through our CRA exam for 2020 to 2022, right? And we produced this fabulous performance context document. It was just fabulous. The data was fine. All that stuff was great. But they spent an enormous amount of time on CBP.
Good.
Even though it's not regulated, it's not a part of the CRA Act, we had to answer more questions on the community benefits plan than we did on our CRA performance. So the lobbying you all did works, even though it's not a part of the regulation.
We can't lobby, we can advocate.
Advocate, yeah.
Let's make this clear to those of you representing social impact organizations in Florida that our voice counts.
That's right.
It matters. Just like visits on Capitol Hill sometimes feel like, we had 15 minutes talking to that young person and it didn't make any difference, but it does. And so please speak up. If you don't know how the right way is to speak up, contact Cornell or folks on the board. They'll help you find the way to speak up. And just one more thing, and Jesse alluded to this, change doesn't happen because only one person spoke up. It's a community effort.
So what I want to add to that, Arden, is that when you speak to the regulators or write to the regulators, it doesn't have to be all bad. It's not just we don't just write things that didn't happen because we didn't want them to happen. We write about the good things as well.
Usually bad though.
Unfortunately, right. I try to encourage that okay, that bank's doing great in your community. By all means, put that in your letter. You can actually submit that letter online. Put that in your letter so that the organizations understand, or that the banks understand, okay, there's some good things we're doing as well. And maybe, hopefully, possibly, they would do more of that. Okay, so it is incumbent that we don't just write when we're upset. We write when they do the great things that we want them to do as well. This is important.
And if you don't understand, your complaint letter matters, right? And that's done through the CFPB, right? When you write a complaint letter and you send it to the CFPB, and a lot of people don't know this, and they send it to us, we have 30 days to respond, right? And typically it's 30 days of response with a resolution, right? So your letter matters, even if it's an individual sending that letter at the end of the day, but you got to know and understand what your rights are and what resources you have in order to make change.
Okay, another question here.
Yes, good morning again. My name is Alberta Klinkskills. So I wanted to say that we have a great relationship with Truist. They actually do our personal financial management with our clients. And we also, I know you know Linda, Linda Stout and Tammy Pacer and the rest of the crew. So
She handles the other side of Florida, which is the north side.
she's on both sides, yeah.
Ours is the south side.
So I guess my question is, how do we get a listening session? Because our organization restructured and became an alliance because we realized the kind of transformation that we need, one organization cannot do it. So now we're an alliance. And so we're already doing the work. We really just need these listening sessions. So how do you,
Yeah,
who
so-
do you recommend how do we get started?
So, we are planning to do something in Florida this year. We just haven't determined the location yet for the listening session. And it's really, the listening sessions hit my desk at the end of the day, and I look at the organization, how many other organizations support it. Typically, listening sessions we host, they include, I don't know, 20 to 30 other nonprofits. And what we suggest is you all work together collaboratively, because basically Truist can't do it by themselves. Any particular nonprofit can't do it by themselves. And, I'm not going to bring an audience of executive leaders, people like that, to meet with one nonprofit, but I will have you meet with our fearless leader, Kari, in South Florida, and or Tammy in North Florida. And if it grows into something more than that, we look at that on a regular, consistent basis, determine if we need to bring the appropriate people to the market to address that need.
And Cornell, isn't it true that CRAF is kind of the convener for these conversations with banks?
Yeah, I was gonna say that, please work with me and partner with us, and we'll make sure that we make it happen in one way, shape, form, or fashion. As Anthony said, we start with the area representative, and then we move forward. I think we had a question over here.
Thank you. And yes, we are ready to attend the listening session. We're ready for that. My name is Sandra Tobon. I represent Consolidated Credit, the nonprofit organizations in the room. And I think that we need to change something to obtain an outcome, a different outcome from the system. We need to do that. So the nonprofit organizations, we need to contact the financial institutions because we do have the community. The community has the needs, right? And we can provide that community to the financial institutions. And we need to sit down with every single one of you. So that listening session should be with every single organization, financial institution in the room. And I heard someone, a bank, saying, they only call me because they need the money. Well, yes, we need the money because we have programs to run. But when I contact the CRA, I don't ask for the money. What I said is, this is the program that I have, and this is the number of people that we are going to change. Would you like to work with me? I never heard a no. So thank you for that. It was just a statement.
And that's a good point, right? Because every bank has a particular strategy, right? And all things align with that strategy to get whatever rating they're seeking, whether that's satisfactory, whether that's an outstanding. And so everything ties back to that strategy, but that strategy should link up to community needs based off the information that you give us. And there's, understand, there's a definitive amount of dollars that every bank has to spend on this. That's why you got to work collectively with all the banks, not just one or two banks at the end of the day. So if you're going to make a pitch for philanthropic giving to one bank, make the pitch to all the banks at the end of the day, because most of us know each other. I know the First Horizon CEO, CRA person, Beth Trotter. I know her. I sit on committees with her. I know the TD person, Michael Ennis Thompson, right? And some of our strategies are the same, but you got to make the pitch to not just one bank, but all the banks.
Yeah, one bank is not going to solve this. Again, as I stated before, this is a team game. One of the things, though, I think is, and as you talked about building relationships, we actually did a workshop last year called How to Date a Bank. And we looked at relationship building. It's just like you do when you're dating. Same thing. Building that relationship, getting to know the person, not the first time you meet them is give me money. That's, that's not what you would do when you were, if you were dating at a nightclub. That's not what you do when you're dating a bank. Not the same thing, right? Approximately the same thing. The key is to build that relationship. And I'm going to tell you this over and over and over again. Invite them to your events. Invite them to be a part of your board. Invite them to facilitate financial wellness programs or small business trainings, things of this nature. Invite them to those things. Even if they don't show up, keep inviting them. Keep inviting them till it gets to the point that they have to show up because, okay, I'm getting sick of you calling me all the time, inviting me to my events, to your event, and you're not, and I don't go. But that's how you build that relationship. And then when that time comes that you need a sponsorship for a project or you need a sponsorship for an event, it is there. There's people in this room I've been knowing since I worked at my other job. And Lee Talker from Wells Fargo, I've been knowing him since when? 2003 or 4? I've been knowing Shakaria since from JP Morgan Chase since 2004 or 5. All these folks I've been knowing all this time. Michelle from City National, I've been knowing Michelle practically since I came back and started working in the nonprofit world. And Michelle was, before Michelle was even at City National, I've been knowing Michelle. But you have to build those relationships. And I encourage you to do that, not just go to ask for money. Always, or ask for a sponsorship or ask for a particular item. Build that relationship with them. I cannot stress that enough. We'll be rerunning How to Data Bank this year, so please be on the lookout.
And I'll tell you, and I've been in financial services banking for 35 years. Believe it or not, I know I look like I'm 35 or something. But that's a long time, right? Long time, right? Says me. First, you got to convince yourself, right? I look like I'm 35. But anyway, and minorities do not do a good job of building those relationships. I'm going to tell you what, if you know that financial inclusion officer, if you know that banker in the branch, and you apply for a small business loan, if they know you, they're going to fight for that loan, right? Because sometimes it requires a little bit of a fight at the end of the day, you know, and so make sure you know your banker, whatever bank it is. And I'm not excluding JP Morgan or Wells or anybody else, Ozark Bank. I work with all those banks on certain committees. I'm just noticing the banks that are sitting right in front of me right now. So it takes all of us to change what we need to change in the communities that we serve.
Okay. Thank you, Anthony. Thank you, Cornell. So
Anthony, stay here
Uh-oh.
and please bring your staff up. And I want to bring the board members
Bring the staff up. Bring the
for
staff. Bring the staff.
Community Investment Alliance of Florida. We're going to take a picture, but before we're going to take a picture, if you look at your one pager that's on each table, turn to the last page.
Yeah, I just want to say, I'm just a talking head, right? The people that are coming up here, they work every single day and they deserve the credit. Come on, up here, come on up here.
If you look at the last page, you'll see that we're working with Truist for a nonprofit capacity building project that came directly out of the meetings that we had with Truist. When Anthony flew down and his boss,
Ellen Fitzsimmons.
who's now left the bank.
She retired. She didn't.
Yeah, she retired. She retired without permission.
Don't say left the bank. That's not a good word.
But we were able to work with them. We put together a project based on the needs that came out of that particular meeting. And what we did was we put 16, in Miami-Dade County, I brought 16 nonprofits together. They articulated to Truist what the needs were for the community. One of those needs was nonprofit capacity building. And we're going to be able to do a lot along accounting, staffing, trainings in order to help those nonprofits stay on their feet and stay viable and build capacity. So we want to thank Truist for supporting that effort. We're going to be the organization that is going to distribute funding. You must be a member in order to apply. One more time, you must be a member in order to apply. One more time, you must be a member in order to apply. For those of you who don't know, I served 24 years in the military and I was a drill sergeant. And when we wanted to emphasize a point, we did this. You must be a member in order to apply. So, Anthony, if you would like to say a few words about the program.
Sure, but and they cut me off. I choose. I too was in the military for a number of years, and I just have a little softer approach than Cornell, which I respect his approach, but being in banking, I have to have a softer approach. And I would say, you know, what we did with the capacity building grant, which covers a lot of things which Cornell covered, typically we wouldn't do, right? When we look at a nonprofit, we look at their annual budget and we have a formula that we use. Hey, we can give them X amount of dollars in philanthropic giving. We went outside of that because we identified the great needs in Miami, right? And because he brought those folks together and they identified those needs, we're going to fund those needs. But what I would hope happens is that all my other banking partners out here, I call this leveraging, right? I call it leveraging, right? Truist can't do it by itself. Let's leverage this and bring in more dollars through other banks to make a more significant impact in the communities that we serve.
Here you go. My voice is big enough. I got a big enough mouth. So we thank Truist, and we're gonna get a picture, and then we're gonna go to lunch and come back in, okay? Can you move down? Let's slouch up a little bit. Yeah. Perfect. You're good. Do you want that? All right, so.
She gives me love and affection. The need I mention. You're the only girl for me. I don't need the next one. Mama loves you too. She thinks I made the right selection. All that's left to do is just hold it to the question. Oh, I think that I found myself a cheerleader. She is always right there when I need her. Oh, I think that I found myself a cheerleader. She is always right there when I need her.
Check, check.
I can change this one. Where's the other? Never. He took the midnight train. Just a city boy, born and raised in South Detroit. He took the midnight train. A singer in a smoky room, smell of wine and cheap perfume. For a smile they can share the night. It goes on and on and on. Strangers.